Our keynote speaker today is Mr. Arthur Frank, a Vietnam War veteran and dedicated public servant whose career spans military service, international advisory work, and government leadership. He began his service in the United States Air Force, volunteering for deployment to Vietnam in 1966 as part of the relocation of the 8th Technical Bomb Squadron to Phi Mein Air Base. There he played a key role in establishing operations under challenging conditions while maintaining aircraft readiness and supporting missions critical operations. Following his military service, Mr. Frank continued supporting the Air Force as a civilian contractor, including an 18-month assignment to Iran as a civilian military advisor, where he trained officers on Cobra helicopter weapon systems during a period of significant political unrest. He later served the state of New Jersey in both the Department of Transportation Division of Aviation and the Department of Treasury's Division of Property Management and Construction, retiring in 2002 after a distinguished career in public service. Mr. Frank continued his service post-retirement with FEMA as a project engineer and later worked as an arbitrator specializing in construction and code compliance. Throughout his career, he has demonstrated a strong commitment to service, professionalism, and excellence. Please welcome Vietnam War veteran Arthur Frank.
Thank you very much. Good morning, veterans.
Good morning.
I must be getting here. Good morning, veterans.
Good morning.
Hoorah. Yes, I'm a Vietnam veteran. I volunteered to go because I was in the Philippines, and there was nothing going on in the Philippines that I could see that I could really pay attention to what's going on in the United States, because my dad was in the Navy and he was in Vietnam. My brother was in the Navy and he was also in Vietnam. Can you hear me back there, Pete? Not a little bit loud. Okay. So when they asked if we had volunteers who would like to go to Da Nang Air Force Base and move a bomber squadron down to an old Japanese air base, I volunteered. We were TDY, which means temporary duty, back and forth between Vietnam and the Philippines for 18 months. After I got out of the Air Force, I came back to Japan and worked there as a civilian. I came here because I'm not from this area. I was born in Montana. Wasn't everybody? And continued my education. Got married to a woman that I met in the Satellite Lounge down by Fort Dix. Everybody's been there? Yes? Okay. And once I got my education, my engineering degree, I volunteered to go to Iran. Now, right now, we see that we're basically at a little bit of a war situation over there in Iran, and I taught them how to use their gunships, their Cobra gunships. And people said to me, how dare you do that? Well, they're not using those gunships anymore. They're using other kinds of rockets and everything else. When I was asked to do this keynote speaking, I asked Mrs. Wilson, what should I talk about? And she says, how did the Vietnam War affect you? It didn't affect me, it affected us. Everyone in this room who's a veteran at one time raised their right hand and solemnly swore to protect the Constitution of the state of the United States. Everybody in this room went to a boot camp, no matter if it was in the Marines, the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, and the Coast Guard. I did meet several people in Vietnam that were from the Coast Guard, so they were also there. They're also Vietnam veterans. But what we have in common is that we all ended up at boot camp, basic training at the same time. It was always in a bus and at night. We got off the bus, we didn't know where we were going, we didn't know what we were doing, but it was always at night, and there was always some guy screaming at us. It might be a chief, it might be a first sergeant, it might be a staff sergeant, it might be a corporal, but all we knew is we were 18, we were 19, or possibly 20 years old, and this was a new life that we were about to experience. The first couple of days was very, should we say, rewarding. We got a military haircut, and I can still remember feeling that buzzer going to the top of my head. So now we were all the same. We had green uniforms, we had dungarees when we were in the Navy, but we were all the same. We might be from Kansas, we might be from Texas, we might be from Louisiana, we might be from New York City, but we were all the same that day. We weren't Benny from Brooklyn. We were now military draftees. We were military individuals becoming soldiers and sailors. The one thing that I remember most about boot camp is, yes, I was in the Navy first before I was in the Air Force. I forgot to talk about that. Is standing in line in your t-shirt, rolling it up, walking through a line that the corpsman said, "Do not flinch." And he had a gun on either side of us. I didn't know what it was. All I knew is, don't flinch. And if you pass out, someone will pick you up and continually go through the line. They were giving us shots by a pneumatic gun. This was an experience that I would never like to repeat in my life. Every 3 months in Vietnam, we did get more shots and more shots. We took pills during lunch, if you want to call it lunch, during chow, quinine so we wouldn't get malaria, salt pills so we wouldn't dehydrate. But that first initial experience in the medical line was the most, I hate to say excruciating pain, but it was a strange experience. We all learned how to march. We learned how to use a gun. We knew how the uniforms that we had were itchy. I knew that they were baggy. Their boots were stiff. But we were in it together. The main thing about being a veteran is you're from everywhere. The main thing about being a veteran, you weren't special, only that you were involved. We didn't wear a dress. We didn't go to Canada. We stood the line. When the government asked us to go to Vietnam, we went. The people of the United States had asked us to perform an activity that we would have never done. We went and served our country. Many of our high school graduates went off to college, got married, didn't show up. We did. My dad was a master chief in the Navy. I went to military schools all over the United States. In 1965, when I got out of high school, the only choice that you had was wait for the draft, join the service, go to college, or get married. 90% of the kids that I went to school with went into the Navy. At the 10th year anniversary, we all talked about what happened to us aboard ship, in Da Nang, on helicopters, the Brown Water Navy. Wherever it happened, we did it. We were proud that we did it. And what do we have in common? We might have been engineers, we might have been electricians, we might have been postal workers, we might have worked at the steel mill. But every time you meet a person that has that hat on, that it says Vietnam veteran or veteran, we have something in common. We joined the service and we became a brotherhood, a sisterhood. Yes, there were 2.7 million American men that went to Vietnam. But there were 8,735 women that went to Vietnam. 18. And I'm proud to know several women who are veterans. And right now, Colonel Ewell is looking at me and she says, if you don't mention all the women that have been involved in the different wars that we had, I'm going to throw some at you. There's a woman right here that has a picture of herself in uniform. My sister was in the Army. She joined the Army because she had to get rid of her husband, and it was the only way she could do it. She was stationed in Alaska in 1970, and she was what was called a lineman. She ran communication lines from place to place. Her outfit was alerted to go to Vietnam. She was excited to do it because she had a father, she had 2 brothers, and myself that were in Vietnam at that particular, well, I wasn't there at that particular time, but had been in Vietnam. They were packed up, they were ready to go. They went out to the flight line on 141, landed in Alaska, and the commander found out there was a woman involved. They redlined her orders. She didn't go. And she was really upset. 2 weeks ago, 2 F-15s were shot down. One of the pilots that landed in, I think it was a UAE, was a woman. American women are now standing the line. And now American women are now on the front lines. They're officers, they're enlisted men and women. But they have to go, and they want to go to war. Not that they are just that type of a person, because they want to stand up for what the people of the United States want them to do. Somebody has to do it. We do not have a draft. We haven't had a draft since 1973. But I read the other day that the quotas are all being filled now. The quotas on being the Army, the Navy, the Marines, and they're being filled by women and men. Just not men anymore. It's not a man's war. It's a person's of the United States. We represent the people of the United States. We resemble everybody anywhere in the United States. When I was in the service, there would be rich kids. There was one guy that had been a band in Chicago. There was somebody from Louisiana that could barely speak English, who spoke Cajun. There were Hispanics, there were blacks, there were people from Germany, there were Canadians that had been drafted. We don't realize, or people don't realize, that back in the 60s and the early 70s, if you were in the United States more than 6 months, you could be drafted. And people joined the Army, joined the Air Force, joined the Navy from different countries. It was the fastest way to become Americans. This one German individual that I met, he came here because he wanted to become an American, but he wanted to serve American values and find out what it's like to be in a service. He was in the Air Force. He was an electrical technician. And he could drink. I could not believe how much he could drink. We did what we had to do. We went where we had to go. And what is the main thing that the serviceman wants when they get overseas or any place? They want to eat. So I did bring my briefcase today. As the director said, I worked for FEMA for 5 years. I was in Katrina for 5 months. I've been all over the United States with Katrina. And one thing that happens when we're out there is we're in a disaster area. We're living in tents. It's just like being back in Vietnam. As a matter of fact, for a while in Mississippi, I was in a place called Camp Shelby. Camp Shelby is a United States Forestry Department facility. And when did we get to eat? There it is. 3,500 calories. They're made for combat, which means if you eat more than 1 or 2 of them, you're so plugged up you can hardly move. Now, when I was in Vietnam, and when most of you were in Vietnam, what did we get?
C-Rack.
C-Rack.
Love it.
This happens to be turkey loaf. And yes, I flew out to Oshkosh a couple of years ago, about 25 years ago, and there was a guy selling cases of these. Before I retired, I gave every Vietnam veteran I worked with one of these cases. And in it is cigarettes, matches, chewing tobacco, and toilet paper. And we found out real quick you can't make cigarettes out of toilet paper because they explode. This is key. It's called a P-38. cans. The biggest can in here had cocoa, crackers, peanut butter. What did you learn in Vietnam? If you take a chunk of C4 and light it, you can heat up your cocoa. This is what I've learned. You don't take peaches out in the field. Marines will tell me that what you want is you want the turkey loaf, you want the lima beans, you want the ham, because that'll give you energy. You can't exist out in the field with peaches. There was a quote that I had written down here, but now I got all this junk on top of here. We feud. We happy feud. We band of brothers. And that's what we are. We're bands of brothers. There's an individual here today that I met just last Sunday. I ride motorcycles. Yes, I'm 79 years old, still ride on motorcycles. And we were out for breakfast. And they were sitting on a different table, two of the individuals. One of them I knew, the other one I didn't. And when we started talking, we found out we were all veterans. One of them had been to Vietnam, I had been to Vietnam. The other person with me had been a grunt in Vietnam. Yes, a grunt. He left his windows open at night, the draft came in and got him. So what do we have in common? We were military veterans. We went to war. We walked the walk. We raised our right hand at one time and said, I solemnly swear. And for the next hour and a half, we talked about boot camp. We talked about being in the ship. We talked about, don't look away, George, I'm talking about you. This is what we did. This is what we know. Every time we meet another veteran, it's hello, brother, welcome home. Yes, when I got back to San Francisco in 1967, December of, I was in a khaki short sleeve shirt. It was cold. It was quiet. I didn't know where to go or what to do. I left Travis Air Force Base and I went to my parents' house. There were no parades. There was no slogans. When people ask me, oh, you were in Vietnam? Yes, I was in Vietnam. But I'd like to tell a lot of people, I mean, she's already told me I got to shut up, but I'd like to tell I was also in Iran for the whole revolution. 18 months when I got there, it was a peaceful place. 18 months later, the Shah had left. I left 3 days later. I was on the military part of the base that used the Cobra gunships. These are experiences that I had when I was in their service. I worked on aircraft. I always have. I was born in the military hospital, the 23rd of August 1946. My dad was a master sergeant in the Air Force. He actually died while in the Air Force. My mother married a chief. So again, I got to run with the Navy my whole life. I worked for the Division of Aeronautics, and everybody in that division was a veteran. All my friends are basically veterans because we all have something in common. And I'd like to say in closing, God bless everyone in this room, and God bless America.